everyone, and welcome. I'm Jacqueline Sklar, host of the U.S. Government Tech Meetup Podcast. Thank you for being here. Whether you are in government, tech, policy, or operations, you're in the right place. We host these sessions to highlight the technologies, people, and ideas shaping the future of public sector work. Today's topic, sovereign cloud and hyperscaler trends, is especially timely as agencies rethink control, compliance, and infrastructure strategy. A quick note, the views expressed by our speakers are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the group or any affiliated organizations. I'm excited to welcome our speaker, the brilliant Jason Blais, VP of Product at Mattermost. Jason, it is all yours. I'll stop sharing.
Excellent. Hi, Jacqueline. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here. And I'll share my screen. We'll have a focus today around sovereign cloud with private control. And really a lot of the trends that I and we at Mattermost have seen around hyperscaler trends this year in 2025 and what we're seeing ahead. For a little bit of intro, I'm Jason, VP Product at Mattermost, and I have worked with mission critical teams leading product for more than 10 years. And in recent months, I've been traveling across the US and Europe to meet tech leaders across NATO, chief cyber commands, nation state cybersecurity leaders, CISOs, etc. And there's no question, as I'm sure you all know as well, we're undergoing unprecedented change in the world. We're shifting global power dynamics, transition to an AI-first agentic world, and the transformation of the cyber landscape that's all fueling and shaping change in the industry and in the world. So the next 30 minutes, hope to share some of those trends. Mattermost itself is the leading open core collaborative workflow platform for defense, intelligence, and critical infrastructure. It's an open source based code base with thousands of contributors, and we automate and accelerate sovereign on-prem and classified operations, really focused on supporting complex environments on the tactical edge with mission partner environments, cyber defense, and more. So what we'll cover today, we'll do a brief introduction around sovereign cloud and hyperscalers just to get everyone on the same page, and then really focus on the strategic drivers for the rise in digital sovereignty, regional examples of major investments that we're seeing around the world, and then key trends and market forecasts for this space. And then, of course, closing with a Q&A at the end. I'd like to start with a simple question to kind of frame our time together and kind of shape the thinking as well, which is, imagine your country's most sensitive data, whether it be national security plans, mission critical systems, citizen identity records, health records. If they were hosted in a foreign jurisdiction, what would that mean for data privacy? What would that mean for autonomy? What would that mean for the ability to act during a crisis? That's the reality that we're facing, and that's the reality that hyperscalers like AWS, Azure, Oracle are continuing to expand into globally, while governments, enterprises, and critical infrastructure around the world are embracing these hyperscalers. They're embracing this new technology and expanding it with the ever-evolving requirements around control, security, and compliance that we'll touch on more during our time. So I mentioned about kind of what is hyperscalers, commercial sovereign hyperscalers. So very kind of high level, hyperscalers are large tech companies that operate massive, globally distributed global infrastructure. They have massive data centers spread across continents with global availability zones. They often operate in multi-tenant infrastructure with shared resources, and they provide self-serve capabilities for users and administrators of the systems to spin up virtual machines, databases, AI models with just a few clicks of lines of code to support millions of users and workflows simultaneously, in some cases at scale. Azure, AWS, Oracle, GCP, those are some of the more well-known hyperscalers that we have. That we have. Now, commercial hyperscalers are and have been most widely adopted over the last decade. They're cloud services that are provided by these hyperscalers. They have shared infrastructure, standardized SLAs, and they're often used for general collaboration, general infrastructure, I would say, for non-sensitive workloads. Sovereign hyperscalers provide similar capabilities, similar security controls, with the added layer of strict residency, privacy, and compliance requirements adhering to national laws. And these are very relevant. Sovereign hyperscalers are very relevant for defense, for intelligence, for cybersecurity, for critical infrastructure enterprises that have these additional levels of data residency, data privacy, and compliance requirements. One question that I often get is, well, there's commercial hyperscalers, there's sovereign hyperscalers. What about running on premises in a fully private environment that you completely manage and own? We're actually seeing an increased need where those self-hosted, self-managed systems may not actually meet their needs of today. And there's a good quote from Lieutenant General Eric Wesley, head of Joint AI Center at the US Air Force, where the rising cloud-based computing, the rising AI, the increased need of masses of data that's required by these systems with ever-increasing levels of security controls, managing all of that in a self-hosted environment is in some cases not an option. And so there is a need to go into cloud, and sovereign hyperscalers is an alternative to the commercial options that we see in the market. And that's where we see a lot of the investment going into. This one is more of a comparison between commercial and sovereign. I won't go into details. We'll actually share the slides that are being shared today, potentially with some modifications afterwards, so you have access to all of this. There's more of a reference and helpful resource that shows the difference between commercial and sovereign in terms of the data location, the jurisdiction, some of the controls in place, the flexibility from an AI and LLM hosting perspective between the two options. So, sovereign cloud, sovereign hyperscalers, what's next? I actually want to start with a poll. So you can write your answer in the chat. We'd love to hear kind of how you're thinking or envisioning it, which is, when thinking of sensitive workloads, what is your top concern when adopting cloud for sensitive workloads? Or if not for you personally, what do you think the concerns might be for your government, for your clients or customers? Would it be national security risks with adopting cloud? Would it be compliance with local laws, public trust in citizen data control, or vendor lock-in? You can type in the chat with 1, 2, 3, or 4, and curious what people say. Yeah, so pretty unanimous, which is, it's no surprise that national security is coming out on top. That's a concern I'm hearing from anywhere from military leaders to CISOs to local governments, public health officials, school systems even, where they're realizing their dependence on this technology and the need to adopt cloud infrastructure and the national security risks that pose. And so what are the options that sovereign hyperscalers and sovereign cloud brings to these markets? Across the globe, we're seeing three strategic drivers that's leading to a rise in digital sovereignty, geopolitical uncertainty, transition to an agentic AI-driven world, and the transformation that we're seeing in the cyber landscape. And I'm going to share an example of each of these drivers, starting with the geopolitical uncertainty. That's leading to unprecedented supply chain risks from these foreign regulations. The first big movement and shift is in EU. EU has been kind of at the forefront of digital sovereignty for a long time. They brought in GDPR back in 2016. It was put into action in 2018. That's almost 10 years ago. In the last few years, especially after COVID, there was a huge shift to commercial hyperscalers and cloud-based technologies. Nordic's a great example. There's probably 70-80% of adoption of cloud, and primarily in commercial. Now, given the geopolitical uncertainty and the shifts that are taking place, there's a renewed surge in driving digital sovereignty in EU. And questions around what does that actually mean in practice? Because it doesn't mean breaking or completely removing US-based technologies, but it means deploying with sovereign technologies in place that gives gives the governments, gives the agencies the control of the data with the right security and compliance requirements in place. And there's also, in parallel, there's a coalition that's calling for what they call radical action on digital sovereignty and taking real, meaningful, urgent action towards it. The hyperscalers, AWS, Azure, Oracle, Google, they're all leaning into it. Pretty much, each of them have made major announcements in the past weeks in their commitment and reaffirming EU on their digital sovereign commitments to the region. AWS announced their plans to launch European sovereign cloud with billions of investments this year. They just announced that last week. Microsoft has announced multiple programs in reaffirming their commitment in European digital sovereignty. They announced a commitment a few weeks ago. Just 2 weeks ago, they launched a European security program to continue accelerating their focus in the region. Oracle and their EU sovereign cloud was launched recently. Google is reaffirming their solutions for EU. So this is continuing, each of the major hyperscalers continuing to invest and reaffirm their commitment in EU digital sovereignty. And in parallel, there was just an announcement actually today from the European Commission. They are facilitating 800 billion euro investment in basically reshaping the defense industries. And big part of that does include hyperscalers, cloud infrastructure, and the adjacent technologies. And what they announced today was increasing the readiness in terms of making it faster for organizations and agencies to adopt this new technology. They've introduced fast-track permits. They are looking to reduce some of the administrative burden that the European Defense Fund currently has in place. They're encouraging joint purchases. They're clarifying application rules and kind of competition laws in the region, because EU is looking to take urgent action given the global uncertainty, and they're looking to remove some of the red tape to make the adoption faster and more streamlined. It's not happening just in EU though. We're also seeing APAC, a big sovereign cloud boom is happening in APAC, tied to the rise in digital sovereign requirements. So IDC is estimating about 1 in 6, 17% of APAC governments already using sovereign clouds, with 1/3 intending to adopt by next year in 2026. So we're not looking at this movement taking place over the next 3, 5, 10 years. We're talking months, we're talking quarters. And so this change is happening very rapidly. not just in EU, but also in Asia Pacific region. And again, driven by concerns around cyber, but driven by concerns around data residency, regulations around data security in the face of the global uncertainty that we're seeing. Second major strategic driver is the transition to agentic world. Probably for a decade, if not 2 decades, there's been so much talk about the value of data, big data analytics, machine learning. In the last 2 years, with the rapid pace of AI, the value of data has skyrocketed to ever higher levels. And that also includes the ability to control what happens with your data that you have as an organization, as a government, as an agency. And what does that mean for me as kind of the one that's accountable for all of that data? A good example of this is the $500 billion Stargate investment in the US AI infrastructure, which was big news a few months ago, a collaboration between OpenAI, SoftBank, Oracle. It's essentially sovereign AI infrastructure for US. Again, it's about sovereign, it's the rise in digital sovereignty that the agentic world is leading to. And there's a great quote from Safra Katz, the CEO of Oracle, where she sees AI, of course, reshaping business, industry, and policy. We see this around the world. What she sees vital is countries and organizations needing to strengthen their digital sovereignty in order to protect this most valuable data that is needed for agentic and AI-powered workflows. So sovereign AI so agentic workflow is another big piece that's driving sovereign AI and sovereign investments across the world. We're seeing this in the Gulf Coast. Good example. Accenture and Google Cloud partnered with Saudi Arabia to provide sovereign cloud and sovereign Gen AI investments. We, in the article, so obviously there's a huge investment they're looking to make, and they're with ambitious targets, where Saudi Arabia is targeting $1 trillion of growth in GDP as part of this investment. It's very ambitious, but it shows the scale of impact that sovereign cloud and sovereign AI can bring into the government and the future growth of that nation. Another example, in Abu Dhabi, Microsoft and Core42 partnered together to build sovereign cloud and AI infrastructure. Multi-year partnership, lots of investment behind it. The third trend around this move to agentic work in this agentic world is telco tech partnerships together with governments for AI. So kind of continuing on the Gulf Coast investments, Ooredoo, which is Qatar's leading telecom provider, they're investing hundreds of millions into building sovereign AI infrastructure. They're building what's called kind of AI factories, powered by NVIDIA, localized infrastructure, national oversight. And the vision is sovereignty at scale, built by telcos who already have the trust and footprint to serve national missions. And again, it's powered by the shift to AI-powered agentic workflows. And it's not just in Qatar, we're seeing this in Indonesia, in Canada, in places of Nordics, where telecoms are transforming into, it's almost like sovereign compute platforms in some ways, where they're becoming the backbone of national digital strategies when it comes to sovereign AI and investments in that space. The third strategic driver is around cyber. This is an example of just recent news articles. I'm based in Finland, so recent news articles in Europe, where the region of Europe and across the world, we're seeing cyber attacks against the very vital aspects of critical infrastructure: power grids, transportation systems, air traffic controls, telecom systems. A few weeks ago, actually, my bank account was attacked. There was a very coordinated DDoS attack against the bank, and it brought the systems down. And so the scale of these cyber attacks is rapidly increasing. I was speaking to a CISO for a big European-based company, multinational company, at a recent event where 3 years ago they were experiencing 1-2 cyber attacks a day. Today, fueled by AI, they're experiencing not 10, not 100, not 10,000. They're experiencing 10 million attacks, up to 10 million attacks a day against the infrastructure and the systems that they have in place. So the cyber attacks that are targeting the very vital critical infrastructure is shaping many of the strategies and the need for sovereignty to be able to bring that control into your own networks and into your own, within your own nation's borders, to add that additional levels of security and control is vital for national security. And so we're seeing the cybersecurity investments into sovereignty as well. Example from AWS partners with Germany to boost cybersecurity and digital sovereignty. There's a really very, very good quote, actually, I love this, from Ryan May. I stole this from a recent article he wrote, CISO, Florida DMS, where he says, cybersecurity is no longer just about defense, it's about sovereignty. And the next decade will be defined how nations, how states, how enterprises are going to reclaim control over their digital destiny. Because that is also going to bring cyber defense against the very vital systems and the critical infrastructure that we all rely on every single day. So those are the strategic drivers that's driving the rise in digital sovereignty around the world. Shared examples from Europe, from Asia, from Gulf Coast, from the US. And it's driven by geopolitical uncertainty. It's driven by transition to agentic world and this transformation of cyber economics, the transformation in the cyber landscape that we are seeing in the world. So we kind of touched on hyperscalers, the commercial and sovereign hyperscalers, some of the strategic drivers around rising digital sovereignty. Now, what does this actually mean in terms of practice? What are the trends that this is leading to? And actually, I'd love to open with another poll. So please add what do you think will have the biggest, of these 4 items, which will have the biggest impact on the industry and really in the world in the next 3 years? Is it regional hyperscalers? Is it open standards, which is a key component around sovereign cloud? Is it sovereign AI? Or is it tactical edge deployments where there's an increased need in operating very complex environments? Yeah, good question around open standards. So open standards in this case means basically the ability for organizations and governments across the world to collaborate on open standards that gives these organizations additional control over their sovereign. So one example of open standards that's been in a lot of conversations is interoperability. How do you interoperate between different systems? Could be different collaboration systems, could be different cyber systems. And if you build open standards around it, you can actually adopt those standards between different governments and agencies while doing it in a very sovereign way. Yeah, so I see some answers so far around options 2, 3, and 4. So some answers in open standards, some in sovereign AI, some in tactical edge deployment. Seems like sovereign AI is the most common answer, and it is sovereign AI. And we're seeing huge investments around the world. Stargate is an example that I gave earlier, but we're seeing big investments also in Europe. There was actually just an announcement a couple of days ago from Germany, where Germany is partnering with Deutsche Telekom and NVIDIA in building sovereign AI cloud in Germany, powered by AI compute. Again, huge investment. This in addition to the Gaia X investment that I'm showing on the screen. That's hundreds of millions of euros in investment into sovereign AI technologies in Europe. We're seeing investments in Gulf Coast. China's building multi-billion-dollar AI superclusters. There's huge investments around other AI infrastructure and LM models around the world. So sovereign AI is a huge trend that's shaping the industry. And in many cases, going back to data privacy, compliance, data security, running AI in sovereign private environments is becoming a must. You must run it on trusted local infrastructure, especially if you're considering to run anything related to classified or sensitive data. It must be running on trusted local sovereign infrastructure. That's a key trend that we're seeing. Another is the regional hyperscaler. That's actually a really big trend where key players like AWS, Microsoft, Google Cloud, Oracle are launching regional sovereign cloud zones that can be deployed for a specific country or specific region. And we're also seeing increased investment from local hyperscalers, such as Swedish-based Evrox, German-based Hetzner, site that's in Saudi, that's fueling investment into regional and national hyperscaler investments. The third one is tactical edge. So being able to operate in very resilient environment. So think of submarines, think of conflict zones. Maybe there's a special operation that's running in the field. You must be operating with the latest technology, and often that's going to mean requiring access to agentic workflows with the with the right cyber security controls in place. That is a very complex problem, but there's an increased demand for this across defense, across intelligence, security, and even enterprise or critical infrastructure organizations that might have to be running in disconnected environments if there's a major cyber attack that's going on, as an example. And then finally, going into open standards, this is really enabling transparency and public trust in operating on open standards that countries across, as an example, across the EU can adopt. And it also enables data sovereignty and freedom from vendor lock-in as a result of those open standards. So those are four major trends that's shaping the industry and shaping the sovereign hyperscalers and the sovereign technology and the investments that are going into it. And we're anticipating huge growth in the sovereign cloud market. So today, an estimate of $155 billion is going to sovereign cloud. There's an estimate that's going up above 800 billion by 2032. And this does not include investments into sovereign AI. This is just investment into sovereign cloud. And on top of that, add sovereign AI. This is a huge market. And that's why we're seeing essentially all of the major hyperscalers increasing their investment, increasing their attention in this particular space. Before I go into the open Q&A to close this session out, what does it mean at the application layer? So if there's an increase in digital sovereignty, there's an increase in sovereign hyperscalers and fueled by sovereign AI and many of the things that were covered earlier, this means the mission stack and the application stack must evolve. Previously, there were commercial systems, there were custom-built proprietary systems that operated and that are still being operated by many organizations, but they're not always no longer meeting the needs around adaptability, around security, around resilience. Whereas purpose-built open platforms that support effective interoperable mission operations, dealing with classified environments, in mission operations, supporting defense, cybersecurity teams. This is where application stacks must evolve. It's purpose-built open platforms that these organizations and governments can adopt. And that's what Mattermost builds and supports. We just announced an intelligent mission environment this month, which provides a self-hosted and sovereign AI-powered collaborative workflows for these key industries. We are targeting use cases around cyber defense, DevSecOps, and mission operations, providing a full, secure collaborative workflow platform, supporting messaging, workflow automation, audience screen share, project tracking, AI agents. And underneath the application, there's a very flexible integration and AI platform that supports the wider integration in the ecosystem, including both, of course, open and sovereign LLM integration, deployed on a sovereign cyber resilient deployment of your choice, whether it's local data centers, whether it's on these sovereign hyperscalers, where we're seeing the market shifting towards, with the security, with the resiliency, with the data privacy that these organizations need. And I'll share one example, which is the US Air Force adopted and have deployed Mattermost in these environments, and have optimized their planning and intelligence for these use cases. And they, with the use of Mattermost, they're able to have the right situation awareness, the right decision advantage to really accelerate their operational tempo to meet the mission velocity that these operations require. And we're seeing this being adopted more and more. Absolutely. If there's more questions, I'm more than happy to chat more. This is something I'm really, really passionate about because of the big changes that we're seeing. My email is there, LinkedIn profile, and we'll distribute some modified slides as well after the session. Jackie will provide those. And this is just the beginning. I think we're just starting to see the shift and the rise in sovereign cloud and sovereign hyperscalers, sovereign AI. And it's going to be very rapid change and big investments that we're going to see over the next coming years. So it's exciting time, and it's going to be interesting to see how things evolve.
Thanks again to everyone for joining us, and a big thank you to Jason Blais and Mattermost for presenting. Next session is next Tuesday, June 24th, and we'll be joined by Lily Davidian from Microsoft National Security to talk about AI and national defense and how it's being used for threat detection, mission planning, and operational resilience.